So if we're watching tonight's draft through a Texans fan lens, there's no pick that the Texans have tonight yet. If you're rooting for the Texans to pick tonight for Nick Caserio to trade up into the first round, or maybe you're rooting for certain players to fall to the Texans at 42 tomorrow or in that range, I set the over-under at where I think the Texans will eventually pick at pick 37.5. So right around, if you're betting on this and you think, I don't think they'll pick before 37.5, 37 or before, you take the under. So as you're watching this tonight, Seth, are there specific guys or position groups that each time Goodell walks up to the podium are going, okay, please don't be this guy, please don't be this guy?
Yeah, I don't know about specific guys as much as the cornerback position in general.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking at like Quinyon Mitchell, who's probably going to go in the mid rounds or so. Cooper DeJean,
middle of the first round.
Middle of the first round, right. Like Cooper DeJean might be one guy that I know. See, now we're at the point too where because Cooper DeJean would be like the first white cornerback drafted in the first round since 1969 or something absurd.
Groundbreaker.
This is what's happening now is that some people wonder whether he's actually should be better as safety. As soon as you utter that, you're labeled as somebody that's totally basing it on race and nothing else. And yet, I just encourage you to go watch Cooper DeJean and not wonder if maybe he might better be a safety.
He's not super fluid,
he doesn't
right?
have fluid hips.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to me imagining him flipping his hips and everything, I just don't know. But that could be like the versatile type of player that maybe some of the evaluators don't feel as high about him as the mock drafters think they do. He might be a guy, because the Texans right now could use both cornerbacks and safeties or guys that can play both. And Cooper DeJean might be that guy. But, you got a Nate Wiggins or Kool-Aid McKinstry or any of those cornerbacks that are projected like mid to late first round. I'll be really intrigued if any of them starts to slide. Because I'd be all about the Texans taking a cornerback with that first pick they have in the second round.
I think the two dreams that died with the pick or with the trade down to 42, the two dreams that Texan fans had, and I know one that I had. I think the dream of a possible Brock Bowers slipping to within range of 23 and getting him. There's a lot of talent evaluators that feel like he's the best player in this draft. He won't go first because of the position. He might not even go 10th because of the position that he plays. He's a tight end, but he is a really good football player. That dream died. And the Byron Murphy dream probably died with that trade, but it seems to be dying now because Byron Murphy is climbing up the board, according to people.
Yeah, which, again,
who knows?
Take it with a grain of salt.
Rumor mill, yeah.
The whole thing, I like Byron Murphy a lot. I think the problem with a lot of these defensive tackles is, and this is where I fall in, there are a lot of guys who really, honestly, are Byron Murphy or imitations of Byron Murphy. Johnny Newton is the next guy on the board who's not I don't want to say he's undersized, but not ideal defensive tackle size. But I don't know if they're athletic enough to be 295 pounds. Mm-hmm. And some of these guys are listed at 301 because they drank a bunch of Gatorade at the combine, but they're 295 or they're 290. So there's those guys that I'm not sure they're athletic enough to overcome their size issues. But then there are a couple of bigger guys in Gabe Hall and Mason Smith, who I think are big enough to overcome their athletic issues. I just wonder if maybe I wonder if both D'Amico and Nick look at those big guys and think, well, the classic, you can't coach size. I don't like these guys in the with the first pick in the second round, but maybe later in the second round.
Yeah.
So they might just wait and bide their time. And if they're gonna if they were to take a cornerback and a defensive tackle, I think that they would probably take cornerback at number 42, and then they would take a defensive tackle
at 59, or they would move up within those little ranges for those positions right there. Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. If they're still sitting at 42, is there a feasible wide receiver that would be sitting there? Let's pretend there are a couple defensive tackles on the board.
Yeah.
Is there a wide receiver that's kind of that we've been seeing in that range that if they're sitting there at 42, you'd get psyched about them taking instead of addressing the defensive side of the ball?
I think, look, there's two guys from Texas that I'm sure a lot of UT people are amped up about, and understandably so, with Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell, who are both like late first round types. And then Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey.
That's the one for me.
I know. And especially because I think that, like, Ladd McConkey is, not to classify him as a slot receiver or anything, but he can play all over. And just like Tank Dell can play all over, and he's not, Tank Dell doesn't take most of his snaps in the slot whatsoever. I think I'm short-sighted, Sean. I'm the child here. Like, Nick Caserio has to do the adult thing and think about the next few years. I've grown, ever since they got Stephon Diggs, I just don't have it in me to really want a wide receiver. I just don't. I don't want one right now. Yeah,
I know.
I feel like this is the year where you draft a wide receiver in the 3rd or 4th round, and maybe hopefully he turns into something. I also don't know how much maybe they're still banking on the upside of John Mechie. I still need to see. John Mechie is still only 2 years removed from his ACL and 1 year removed from being cleared from cancer treatment.
Right.
Let's remember, he was cleared from cancer treatment in the spring of last year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've seen the best version of John Mechie yet, and I think they probably feel the same way. They want to wait and see exactly what he's like this year.
And CJ has given Mechie glowing reports on their workouts out in California. No, I'm just throwing it in there as a just a point of information in all this that he volunteered it multiple times how good Mechie looks. So
he probably loves Mechie.
Yeah,
but he also this is kind of like the whole Gary Kubiak conundrum, which is I think that sometimes when your head coach is a quarterback's guy and a quarterback's coach, it can be hard to remove yourself enough from the situation.
Yeah.
Was he a little too in love, or at least did he believe in Matt Schaub? It's important for your quarterback's coach and your offensive coordinator to believe in your quarterback, but it makes it tough to make those hard decisions sometimes. So like CJ's gonna he's gonna believe in his receivers.
Of course,
he's a good leader, and he's gonna do everything he can. But ultimately, that's why you've got a GM and a head coach to make those hard decisions.
To make the rational decisions.
Yeah, but up to CJ, they'd keep every single one of them.
Yeah, probably. Right. So I wide receiver at 42. I do like this about where the Texans sit also, with 2 picks in the 2nd round, and why I'm not totally hyped up for them to move into the 1st round is I like that 1 day in between the 1st and the 2nd round. Back in the day, I think day 1 was rounds 1, 2, and 3. And then day 2 was rounds 4 through 7, I think is how it went. Or maybe it was 1 and 2. But it was a 2-day draft over a Saturday and Sunday.
Back in the day, it was 1 through 3 on the first day.
Was it 1 through 3?
4 through 7, yeah.
Yeah, so.
I got drafted in the 4th round. And
okay.
I was sitting there. I had a bunch of teams thinking about taking me with the last pick in the 3rd round. And then I had to sit through the whole 3rd round and then sit around all morning. And then,
Yeah, so the 2nd round is the second round is the new 4th round, so to speak. You got a day. They made their first 32 picks, the league did, and now you got a day. And I kind of like Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans kind of having a day to survey things, work on some deals, really get a feel for how they think things are going to fall, as opposed to – I'm not saying they'd make a bad decision, but as opposed to having 10 minutes to make a decision on moving up to 29 or something like that.
Right, yeah, and you can you get a feel too for because all the dynamics of it. Some of those teams in the 1st round, after they get who they want, or perhaps maybe after they maneuver, they have to reset exactly how they're going about it. So the possible trades and everything, or who you might call, changes a lot based on whatever happens. I was wondering, these guys you got to force yourself to get good sleep,
Oh yeah.
It's a lot going on to
talking
also
about the
be
executives.
Sure. Yeah,
you
got to try to really force yourself to get at least 6 hours of sleep so you're sharp enough to make good decisions.
You have to force yourself to do it, but at the same time, act like you have not slept in 3 weeks.
Yeah, right. It's a matter of bragging.
Tell people how hard your job is. And Nick doesn't do that, but there's others who've done that before.
That's where I would be a horrible general in the Army. I'd be operating on fumes all day long, making really rash and bad decisions.
Right.
That's why they turned me down, which I applied to be a...
You did?
Yeah.
That's why they
didn't let me into West Point. That was the first question they asked. How do you do without sleep? I'm like, oh!
You just started yelling at him. Yeah. I haven't had any sleep since I had to drive to this place yesterday. Text message, move the hell on from Tunsil and Howard. We have a solid young nucleus in the middle. Start drafting their replacements, highest paid O-line, and still can't run. Where are you on that? What do you think about it?
I don't understand the solid nucleus in the
center.
Well,
you got Juice Scruggs, who we don't know really what he is.
We don't have a clue whether he's. I'm optimistic about him, but no, you don't. Yeah. And you've got a good right guard, but he's not young. And you have a complete blank space at left guard.
Yeah,
100%. Now, the tackles are fine. The tackles are absolutely fine. I don't know. I don't understand moving on from them or why you would. I've seen a lot of people. I've got one guy that emails me constantly telling me, it's weird. I can't get it through his head that I'm actually okay with Titus Howard at right tackle. Because he keeps arguing with me about sunk costs. He's like, well, it's a sunk cost. You got to move on. I'm like, no, I'm genuinely okay with Titus Howard at right tackle.
Yeah.
And
he was left guard all last year.
I know. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't understand.
He has yet to take a snap at right tackle on his new contract.
Right.
Because there's an extension off of his old one. So
he's a good tackle. He's an awful guard. That's just the way it is. I think sometimes people don't want to accept that they are different positions. It's not as simple as, and because offensive tackle, it's harder to find a good offensive tackle. They assume that, oh, then you must be a good guard because you're that athletic. That's like saying that a good rush defensive end is a good nose tackle.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to find the good rush end, but you don't want Will Anderson playing nose tackle. I can guarantee you that. Yeah.
No. He'd try really hard at it, though. He would try super hard.
He'd be like holding people on the ground he'd be on his back holding him down like an MMA match. He'd create a lot of piles.
He would.
What he would do.
Create a lot of piles and then tell everybody in that pile how awesome they are as human beings. Speaking of Will Anderson, we'll get to Will in the next segment, reliving how important this day last year was to this team. I think when you go back and listen to the picks and you go back and listen to the phone calls, man, it really hits home just how crazy good last year wound up for the Houston Texans. Someone saying Patterson and Green as the young nucleus on the interior. Again, Kenyon Green has yet to play a good game yet in the NFL, and Jared Patterson was injured after 9 games at center.
Yeah, if Kenyon Green is your nucleus, I don't know what kind of cell structure we're working with here. I don't feel good about that nucleus. I feel
worst
like
mitochondria ever. All right, Payne and Pendergast with you on a.
I cannot remember a single thing about cell anatomy.
Mitochondria.
Good job with your mitochondria.
Yeah, that's. I've emptied the chamber. That's all I've got. That's all I've got, man. That's all I've got. All right, let's read.